Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm your host, James Farino. Join me while we explore the truths most people never hear. I'm James Farino, and welcome to What Nobody Tells You. Today on What Nobody Tells You, I'm going to be talking about being able to find accurate news and information in today's world. So I know a lot of us are having a lot of trouble. We're all getting bombarded with huge amounts of information, and much of it is not correct, is false information. And there are AIs out there. People are using AI to create things that are false, but there's also just a flood of false information, especially on social media. And I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people are confused and don't know how to get accurate information, don't know how to know if something is true or not. If you see something, how do you know if it's true? You can no longer believe text. You can no longer believe video. You can no longer believe pictures. So seeing is not believing anymore. And all the videos of famous people and presidents saying things they never said. I mean, you're seeing all the stuff out there, right? So I'm going to go through, stay to the end, because I'll give you some accurate sources, some sources that have been vetted, but I want you to know how to vet things yourself so that you don't just, I'm not going to just hand you a list of things and say, these things are real, these things are true. Because how does that help you? Then you would just have to believe me, and how do you know to believe what I'm saying, right? So I'm going to walk you through it, how it works, how you can vet things, how you can do some level of research on your own, and use some tools and some skills and some knowledge to be able to get accurate information on things and to be able to tell if something is true or not true. There are some simple shortcuts to a lot of this, but there's also some things that take a bit of time, a bit of learning. Although once you get used to it, not that much, really. I know I can scan through things really quickly and tell what's true or not. Just to start, I'll give you some background on myself so that you know where I'm coming from, what my experience is, and that'll give you some groundwork for where some of this information is coming from. So how do we find reliable sources, right? That's what you want to do. I have 3 master's degrees, and in grad school, they taught us how to do research. Once I graduated from both Cal State Fullerton and San Francisco State, I began to apply these in my life and in my career. I worked as a reporter for 5 years. I had a news magazine show, and I interviewed people, and I had to report on the news, and I had to, before things were put out on the radio or whatever form I was doing it, whether I was writing an article or putting it out on, video or audio, I had to know whether it was true or not. And the way to do that is to vet your sources. So, and I will talk about that in a few minutes, about how to vet things, at least in a simple way. I have worked in politics, and I have a lot of experience writing and doing research, and that's why I know how to do these things. So how do you find if a source is reliable? So you have to vet them. And vetting means you have to find 2 other sources that will corroborate that source. And it's actually not that complicated. So you find 2 other sources that'll vet that source. But along with this, some amount of broader knowledge needs to go, because things are so complex now. You could probably find 2 inaccurate sources to vet a 3rd source. When you vet a source with 2 other sources, you want to, at least one of those sources, hopefully both of them, you've already vetted those. So you need to start somewhere. You have to have some source that you trust to begin with, at least one, because you have to have somewhere to start with. And I will give you a list of some sources. And then when you look at those sources, hopefully you have at least one source that's trusted, that you know so far. And I'll go into a little more detail about examples of things like this. And I'll talk about some of the more common sources and how you can use them. whether they're completely reliable or not. Even the sources that aren't completely reliable can still be used as long as you can be able to parse the information and realize what in it is reliable and what in it isn't. And different sources have different levels. So some sources are 100% reliable and some are a lot less than that, and some are very unreliable. One thing I want to say at the outset, too, is that what makes a source reliable, because no source is perfect, right? We're all human beings. None of us are perfect. No newspaper or television studio or source of information has ever been 100% accurate all the time. And the way this is dealt with is that a reliable source is a source that first has the intention to report accurate information. Two, it's a source that does analysis on whatever it's reporting. So it's not just spewing out facts like a computer would. This. Whoever's writing it, whatever person is writing or speaking it, has written it, is somewhat of an expert in this area, at least has some knowledge of it, and is analyzing it for you and simplifying it for you and giving you context of what surrounds this information. So if you get just the information about a particular event and nothing around it, like you don't get the backstory or the history or what other people are doing similar things, or there has to be context and all the things around it, or it's meaningless. So a reliable source will always give you analysis and context. That's very important. And they're attempting to give you the best information they can. A lot of sources are not attempting to do that. Now, it's hard to tell whether they want to or not, so you're not going to know that at first. But a reliable source is attempting to be accurate, is giving you analysis and context for it, and also to make a source reliable for yourself, you want to vet it with two other sources. Also, a reliable source is going to be right if it's really an effective organization or individual and they're really, really making an effort. They're going to get things right more than 99% of the time, far more than 99%. And once in a while, they're going to make a mistake. They're going to screw up and the information won't be correct. So when that happens, they will have a retraction. They will come back, whether it's in print or video, they will come back and say, this was a mistake. This information is not correct. Here's the correct information. And this is something historically newspapers have done throughout the years. If they print something incorrect, they print a retraction. And that's the behavior of a reliable source. A source that doesn't go back and do that when they make a mistake, that not only is that not reliable, it shows you that maybe their intention is not really, their main focus is not to give you correct information. It may be something else. For instance, like in advertising, the main focus, the predominant reason for the advertising is not to give you correct information. So if they give you incorrect information, they don't go back and correct it because that's not what they're trying to do. I'm not trying to give you context in a complete story because it's a completely different form of something. But there are sources now, there is information out there that comes from people who have something else in mind. That's not their main motivation. So you want to look out for that and you'll begin to be able to figure out who some of these organizations are. So, and let me talk about unreliable for a minute. So unreliable sources will not only not do those things, but they will use other means. They will, of course, using AI to change things is clearly not accurate information by putting in false information. That's blatantly unreliable. So if you ever catch like any account or any on social media or person or organization doing that, then you realize that that entire thing is not reliable. Unless they come back with a retraction and apologize for that and correct it, You do not want to trust that account, that person, that organization. They just write them off. You do not want to trust them again because they're simply not reliable. So some of the things that are used to make a source not as reliable are an organization or person that puts out information and uses omission. So not providing incorrect context, but perhaps providing not enough context or no context to an event. And also by just simply not mentioning things. So omitting things that don't align with the narrative they're trying to project. And this is really important. There's a lot of people, of course, and a lot of organizations with agendas, and they're trying to project a particular story or a particular narrative. And they will give you the information that fits the narrative they want to project, and they will omit the information that does not project that narrative. So someone who wants to provide you with information accurately will not do that, or do certainly less of it. So we're all human beings, and as humans, we all tend to have some kind of reason for doing things. So none of us are perfect, and not everything can be included in everything. And we understand that, right? Mistakes are going to be made. Information is going to be incorrect sometimes, but it's when the odds of it being incorrect become too high. Once it becomes really even 1 or 2% of the time is not great. But when things can have a much higher percentage of incorrect information than that, and a lot of major sources of information. So that's one of the things. Another thing is when they have information that's very valuable to people, they will hide it in some way. They will, because if you want to, here's an example with newspapers. This is because, let's give you a classic example. If a newspaper wants to really communicate to the population that there's something going on, that's maybe something they see as being important to the population, and that what is decisions being made by governments and companies are not aligning with what the benefits of the needs of the population are, they will continue to report on that repeatedly. So like during the Vietnam War, the New York Times and other newspapers had something about the Vietnam War on the front page every day, day after day after day after day. And that really brought it to people's awareness. And it showed people, just that consistency showed how important it was. So it was, and that's two different things. One is that it's visible, it's made highly visible, and the other is that it's repeated. So it's talked about a lot, and those two things will bring it home to somebody. Now, you could, if you wanted, take that same thing, the Vietnam War, and if you reported it only once a week and you put it on the back page, well, not that many people are going to see it, and it's not going to make that big a splash. And really, the population of, say, the city that's reading that is not really going to have an awareness of that issue. Though some small number of people will have a small awareness of it, but you really have not done your job. You have not gotten the information to the people that it's supposed to get to. So the idea of journalism is to allow the population, it's a sacred trust where you're providing the information to the population of the country or world, the information that they need to be able to make decisions like voting and purchases and getting jobs and things that are really important to their lives. No matter what smoke and mirrors you do or pretend that, okay, I told them, it was in the fine print, that doesn't actually get them the information. So it takes more than simply saying you did it and putting it in the fine print or sticking it in the back page. It takes whatever it takes. So if the information hasn't gotten through to people, you keep trying, right? And that's what a good paper would do. That's what any good news organization would do. And that's what the New York Times did with the Vietnam War. in the 60s and 70s. And that was an example of proper reporting, of being an reliable source, at least in that instance. So, and I'm not saying that that's a better paper than other papers, that they're always like that. I'm not in no way endorsing the New York Times. I'm just using it as an example because it's prominent and it's the paper of record. But that's just an example. I'm not endorsing it. So on social media, if you think about it, it works a little different than it does in, like, television and radio work roughly the same as, or have traditionally worked roughly the same as newspapers, and that there were journalists, people who went to journalism school. They learned how to do research. They learned how to do reporting. They learned how to write things. They learned how to do analysis. They learned how to provide context for stories. They learned what was important and what wasn't. They learned how to vet people and sources. And then they could share that with everyone else. And that's being a journalist is. And there were organizations and editors that would support them. Now, that's kind of fallen apart. Most of the newspapers like that are gone, and most of the TV and radio as well. Though the organizations may still technically exist, they're no longer following those practices to different degrees, to varying degrees. It's different for everyone, different for every organization. What are you supposed to do with this morass of information that's piling on you, right? I would say the first place to start would be social media, because I think I want to start with that because that's somewhere that almost all of us are going almost every day. And it's someplace that it seems like most people are getting their information. And the first thing I would say about social media is until you vetted a source on there, it's not vetted. So, and there's a little complexity to this too. So, like, say that you, again, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying that this is factual. I'm not making a judgment of this organization, but we use the New York Times for an example just because of what it is. Say you, for yourself, you vetted that and you believe that to be a reliable source and you're using it. So now on social media, you can trust that source. But you can't trust all the other ones. So anything you haven't vetted, everything that you haven't proven to be reliable, and you really have to go through proving it, isn't reliable. In other words, in simplistic terms, you can't really believe what you're seeing on social media until you have vetted that source. So, and a complication to that is, so say now you vetted the New York Times and now you're on their feed and you see things from the New York Times. You still must be very careful because other people will share things and post things that will end up in your feed, and they can put the New York Times logo, they can make it look like the New York Times when it is not. So that can be faked really easy. So at a glance, or even with examination, it can look like that's what it is. So if someone emails you something, if something is posted on social media, if something somewhere, it is a good practice to not only not believe what that is, don't believe it until you have vetted it, until you've looked. The first process you go through, if you were emailed information or if you see it in social media, is go and do a search and find it independently. Don't follow the link that the person has left you, because that link could be incorrect. It could be lying to you. If you know a lot about how browsers work and you know a lot about, and you're a technical expert, you'll be able to tell if that, where that link is going. But if you don't have expertise in that area, do a separate search. If you have expertise in that area, then you can go ahead and click on it and you know what you're doing. But most people don't do that. Go do a search and find it independently. Just like with your email, it could be spam. Don't click on anything ever in your email, right? Unless it came from someone you know. And even if it did come from someone you know, actually, don't click on those either. Go search and find it for yourself. And then we'll see if it's even exists. So you can do that and then find it, and it's still that we're still not to reliable yet. All right, that's still not reliable. So for that, so if it happens to be a newspaper, take that newspaper it's good to just take one story, like to vet an organization, you do one story at a time. So take one story and research that story. See if you can vet it with two different things. Now, what I like to do is I'm going to get into sharing some of the sources with you. There are a couple very large, very impeccable sources that you can go to so that you can compare what you're seeing somewhere else. And if it doesn't match with what you see on the reliable source, now you know that that source is not reliable. So, and when a source gets shown as reliable, then you know for now, forever until that organization gets sold and revamped or some big thing happens with it, it's not reliable forever. And I want to say something specific about this. Not reliable does not mean that it's not ever correct. It just means it doesn't pass muster. It doesn't pass the accuracy level that it needs to have. It needs to be more than 99% accurate. So if something is, I don't know, 85% accurate, that is terrible. That means 15% of the time it's a lie, which means you never know if it's true. Even 5%, still terrible. You'll never know if the thing is true or not. There's a 1 in 20 chance every time you read something in there that it's not true or see it. That's terrible. So, but that doesn't mean that most of it isn't true, right? So you can pull up all kinds of examples from something and say, this is absolutely true. I've checked it. This is absolutely true. This is absolutely, look, I got 10 stories here from this organization and they're all true. But it's when you find the one that's not. How often is that happening? And did they do a retraction? That's what's important. So, but it doesn't mean they're not producing things that are correct. It just means you can't use it as a reliable source because it's not. Imagine like if, say, you were an reliable employee. If you just didn't show up to work 1 out of 20 times that you were scheduled, so that's not good, right? Employers frown upon that. Well, the same thing with, this, or what if you're married and 1 out of 20 days you just don't come home, just don't show up. So 5% is bad. 5% makes you unreliable, even 1%, really. So you just think about how often you want to be let down by someone or lied to by someone. You want that to be very, very seldom for them to be reliable. Like how often do you want someone lying to you? How often do you want them, or just mistakenly letting you down? It doesn't even have to be intentional. So, yeah, so there's a pretty high bar for this. But like we have high bars in our jobs and our relationships as well, right? We don't want big catastrophic things happening or ridiculous things happening, false things happening frequently. Now I'm going to get into where you can start being able to vet something. So say you find an article online or see a video and you want to see, is this true? One very simple, very easy go-to thing is, let's see, I've written down some notes to see Snopes.com, Snopes.com. So I'll show you that again later. But that is not only a reliable source in itself, it is for checking if things are reliable. So that's its whole purpose. And I've used it for years. It's a very good tool. I have never seen it to be incorrect. Not once. And that's using it many, many times over many years. So this is an absolutely reliable source to me. So, because I've had the experience with it. So, which is essentially what, like with the job or the relationship, once you have the experience with the person and they show up on time, you can trust them. So similar thing here. You can use Snopes.com to look for other things. So, and you can look up almost any, even, things that aren't necessarily important political news or anything like that, but you can check if someone's married, if someone, there's a rumor about somebody crashing a party or whatever it is, you can look that up. Strangely, it seems to have everything I've ever searched has been there. I always thought, well, they won't have everything, but I have also never run into them not having the information. even for things that I considered small. Obviously, they can't have everything up there, but they're really good about it. It's pretty huge database of information. So yeah, you can also check like big things like urban myths and folklore things and things people believe that never happened, like the Casablanca thing where people will say "play it again, Sam," which wasn't actually in the movie. Things like that you can look up. So another source, this is going to take a little bit of explanation as well, but I would say the best source in general for a broad range of things in the world is Wikipedia. But there's some political things around this. I have found in my experience, you can think for yourself about people that a large number of people, places I've worked, places I've been, friends I've had, believe things that aren't true about Wikipedia. So, just to make this a little, meta, they don't quite understand how it works and so think that it's inaccurate, which is not true. So here's a simple explanation of how Wikipedia works. I will not go into all the details, but you have to go through this. You can apply to be one of the people who can make changes on it, enter information. There's an extensive process. I remember I started this process a few years back. I can't remember the details of it, but I spent a lot of time doing it, and weeks went by, and I finally gave up. It was just too complicated and took too much of my time. So it's not easy to do. But there's a certain number of people who can. And the way it works is it's social, so it's a large group of people. And this doesn't make the information less accurate. Like the rumor is that it's less accurate because anyone can change it. No, it's actually more accurate because it's a large group of editors, a large group of people entering information, and because they can correct each other. So it's far more accurate than other things are. And there's also a way to look at it, to read it. So when you look at a piece of information, you will see that everything is referenced, everything is footnoted, which is what you do when you're really serious about providing accurate information. So, and there'll be a number, and you can click on it. There'll be a little blue square there, and that will take you to the reference material, and you can go there and see the article or whatever it is. And then that gives you the ability to go, okay, here's this information. Wikipedia, it says this on here. I'm going to go to that original source information and see what I think about that. And if you want to, if you're not totally convinced by that source information, you can also reference the source information. You could look the source information up on Snows just to be sure, right? Or look it up somewhere else, Google Scholar maybe. Often there are more than one source. So then once you see more than one source and it's on there, this is going to be pretty correct information. Also, Wikipedia has a very good reputation for keeping things correct. Now, there is one thing that can happen because of just the manner that it needs to be structured. Someone can put information in without a source, right? And one of the reasons this is done is because it's a group thing, right? A whole bunch of people are doing it together. So one person may remember or know this event, but they don't know where source material is for it. But they can put it up there anyway. Then someone else can come up and go, okay, I know where the source is for that. And then they'll put that up. But that person may not have thought of putting the information up to begin with. And so it allows it to grow. It allows it to have more information. Now, if there's a number there, which you can click on, that'll take you to the source, or it will say citation needed in little blue letters up in the corner to the right of the end of the sentence or that piece of information. If it says citation needed, it means there's no citation, there's no reference, there's no proof for it yet. Presumably someone else will come in and they will either remove that information or add a citation. So what you're seeing is just you're coming in while they're making the meal. It's during the process. So when you see that information, you don't want to use or cite that information to anyone else because it's not yet proven. You could go off and try and prove it yourself, go find the information yourself, or you can just wait until someone puts something up there so the citation isn't needed. So just don't rely on the things that say citation needed, because they're in the middle of being made. It's like, driving a car off an assembly line when it's only half built. I think people are missing that. Don't trust that. It's like it's not there. You're just seeing a shadow of what might be there in the future, and it might get removed. It might get a citation. You don't know which way it's going to go. It could make you think of it though, and it can give you I know what that is. So you can go look that up yourself, or more likely you don't. So just ignore it. Pretend you didn't see it. Don't use it. Do not use that. As long as you do that, it's safe to say it's one of those accurate sources of information on Earth because of the way it's built. It has a higher level of accuracy than you get from a single individual. So fantastic source of information. And there's been a lot of, rumors and talk to presumably try and undermine Wikipedia. So we can even look right here. Let me pull this up. So as far as, I'm going to share this on the screen so you can kind of see some of this in action. I am going to share. So this, you can see this right here. It's big enough for you to see. It's the fact bot on Snopes that will check. Now, there's a regular lookup on Snopes and an AI one. I've brought this one up. This is the last thing. I searched this before, but I will search it again. Can anyone change information on Wikipedia? So we can check out about Wikipedia. And we can use Snopes to do it. Let's see, I haven't used this factbot before. So the factbot is saying yes, but with some restrictions. Wikipedia is a collaborative platform where users can contribute to articles, but not everyone can make changes without restrictions. According to Snopes Archives, Wikipedia operates under a set of guidelines and policies to ensure the quality and reliability of its content. For example, to edit most Wikipedia pages, a user must create an account and go through a verification process. I can tell you the verification process is extremely long and difficult. However, there are also some pages that are open for anyone to edit without needing an account. Additionally, added information, I have never seen one of those pages. Apparently, they're out there. Additionally, Wikipedia has strict policies against vandalism and spam, and any user found violating these policies may be blocked from editing. Therefore, while it is possible for anyone to access Wikipedia and make changes, there are certain restrictions and guidelines in place to maintain the integrity of the platform. So, yeah. So that's what we got in Snopes about Wikipedia. So Snopes is giving you the details behind that. It even had a detail or two that I wasn't aware of, that there were some pages, apparently, it did not say how many or what pages those were. But like I said, I have never seen these pages that people can edit. Then let's unshare that. Okay, so we'll cancel that out. But that's an example of how Snopes works, and a little bit of information on Wikipedia and how it's a reliable source. If someone were to change something and enter something, the backup for anyone making changes, as I said before, is the citation needed thing. So they either have the citation and it's in there, and then you can look at that, or there's no citation. And if that happens, if someone changes something and puts something without a citation, do not trust that information. That information is not reliable. It may be correct, but it's not reliable. So I'm going to repeat that again. Because something is correct, because an organization is putting out mostly correct information, that does not make them reliable. To be reliable, they have to pass a higher standard. much higher than being correct 90% of the time does not cut it. Okay, so those are both good sources, and you can try them out for yourselves. Type a whole bunch of things you already know into Snopes, and see. And if Snopes disagrees with what you think, then you need to go check it somewhere else too. And I'm going to continue with a number of other sources I can give you. You could check it on one of those. But just with Snopes and Wikipedia, if Snopes is incorrect, I haven't seen it be incorrect in the past. If you suspect that that's happening, because, mistakes are made. No organization is perfect. Certainly, I was using the AI about there, and AI is not perfect at all. I would actually, even though I was using that for simplicity, I would recommend just searching the regular database rather than use the AI right now. If you are really concerned that you want accurate information, especially in the beginning of doing this, use the regular database. But you can go look on Wikipedia to see if it jives with what Snopes said. So that's a good thing to start with. Okay, here's some other. So I'm going to start with indisputably reliable sources, and which I believe these first two are. And this third one also. It's called Foreign Affairs. Now, Foreign Affairs is, let me see here, a magazine. They also have a website, and they have an email that they send out weekly with articles in it. And let's look up the council. Let's see what the Google AI will say about them. So, because we want to, you got to look things up. So, council, bringing up other things. So the council, Foreign Affairs is the magazine. The Council on Foreign Relations is the organization. I misspoke there. I have their website, but let's look and see. The AI had nothing to say on them, so that's interesting. So I will share with you what I am looking at right here. We'll look at the process. Okay, so here's the Council on Foreign Relations. Let's go to their website and see what they have to say about themselves. So, the website, rather than defining them, is just giving us different news. But there's things here. Trump shouldn't give China a veto on Taiwan arms sales. The Council on Foreign Relations is an American think tank focused on U.S. foreign policy and international relations. Founded in 1921, it is an independent and nonpartisan 501 nonprofit organization with outstanding ties to political, corporate, and media elites. Outstanding. So, essentially, it is run by and made up of some of the most powerful people in the world. Here's what Wikipedia has to say. The Council on Foreign Relations is an American think tank. Okay. Oh, that's where the other information that you just pulled it from here. The CFR is based in New York City and additional offices in Washington, D.C. Its membership has included senior politicians, secretaries of state, CIA directors, bankers, lawyers, professors, corporate directors, CEOs, and prominent media figures. CFR meetings convene government officials, global business leaders, and prominent members of the intelligence and foreign policy communities to discuss international issues. So, what I have found with their publications and their website is, over the years, that Foreign Affairs from the Council on Foreign Relations, I think because it is a nonprofit, number one, so it's not trying to do something else except provide information. And number two, because it is run by the most powerful people in the world, and because it is like a newsletter between all the billionaires and leaders of this planet, they take great pains to make sure that the information is correct. And they have the education and the resources to be able to do that. Now, other organizations have to worry about profits. They have other priorities, whereas it's good to have nonprofit organizations because then you don't have that in the way. But I have found this to be an impeccable source of information. Because if you think about it, you couldn't have incorrect information going between the leaders of the world. Huge things would fall apart. I mean, it would be an absolute disaster if they started giving each other incorrect information. So, and it's not something that usually the general population is looking at as a resource, but I think with the problems we have now with social media and kind of the downfall of the old system of news and information, it's something that exists and is there that will provide you with accurate information. So it's an untapped resource. It's definitely, in my experience, I have never seen, not only have I never seen incorrect things, the level of analysis and context is, I would say, impeccable. I've never seen anything else on that level besides journal articles or studies, things like that. Something that can just come in an email to you. That's Wikipedia again. If you are trying to vet something in the foreign relations area, they don't have the same kind of database that the other places have where you can search, but they do have a search function here. So if you want to, you can search for articles. I'm not sure how the database is, to tell you the truth. Between just those three resources, Wikipedia, Snopes, and Foreign Affairs, you can check each other. You can check each other on them. Again, all three of those, still, we have not gotten to anything I've ever found an error in. Next thing I have, because I have never seen an error in this, is the Greg Palast. Now, Greg Palast does research. He was essential in doing research in the 2000 election, and he identifies voter fraud and ways that elections are stolen around the world, including in the U.S. And let's see, I'll show you his website. So at the end, I'm going to, at some point I'll show you this during the video, the names of these places. I have links here, but, the links are just names. But I will look here at this. If you're at all concerned with elections, this is the place to go, if this is an interest of yours. Now, I've been following him for, I guess 27 years. And I have not known him to be inaccurate ever. So what do we got here? And there's some articles at the top here, but you can also, there's also films, and he's got podcasts and BBC reports on here. But there's a lot of information on this site, more than just simple things. But if you wanted to just go here and read the articles, you could do that. There's an article about Trump and an article about Stephen Colbert. Yeah, I haven't read what's on here, but it really is a great resource. I've never known it to be wrong. But you can check that out for yourself. I mean, that's the other thing, you can't just believe what I'm telling you either. So look up your own stuff. And you got to compare things with each other, right? And use things to vet each other. Now, there is some danger there because you don't, they all may be on the same page with something political. But so you might want to start with checking things that are non-political, just rumors. Like if you want to test out Snopes or Wikipedia to see if you don't currently trust those, look up things about, urban legends and, things that have a non-political context, things about agriculture, whatever it is. And maybe that you'll be able to test their accuracy on those things first, and then that can take you into more complex things. So you test it on a bunch of simple things that nobody has an agenda on, and then that can help you to gain some confidence in them. Then you can start checking them on the more complex things as well. So another very similar to Greg Palast is Glenn Greenwald. There's been a bit of a phenomenon the last 20 years. So news organizations have downsized and cut the reporters. They've also tended to cut the journalists. So there are not very many journalists left in TV, radio, print news. There are some, but there are not a lot. There are not very many. I think like CNN only has a handful of people working at the entire organization with journalism. You'll have to look up the numbers on that for yourself. I haven't looked it up in a while, so I don't know what the numbers are now. But it's low, and it's like that with all the TV news and radio, and it's higher in print, but there's still issues there. So a lot of these reporters, a lot of these great journalists have been fired and pushed out and have decided to go on Substack or have their own website or both, right? So that is really a great source of news, is to go to those journalists that, you've been following your whole life and that you can trust. The ones I have listed here that I find to be impeccable are Jeremy Scahill. He has the Drop Site News on Substack. He's impeccable. I remember when he was very young, and he was an amazing reporter. And it's been a quarter of a century. I've been following him for a quarter of a century, and Greg Palast as well, and Glenn Greenwald for almost that long. They're just amazing reporters. And Dan Rather has Steady, which is on Substack. He also has a website, but Substack's where he publishes his articles. And this is Dan Rather from, he's a legend. Been following him my entire life, really, since the 70s. And still incredible journalist. Haven't seen him post-retire. And then on Substack also you have Heather Cox Richardson, who's like become more known lately, I've noticed in the last year or so, since the current administration. And she has something called Letters for an American, which is on Substack also. If you want, she's actually a professor of history, so if you want historical context for things, this is right. If you're interested in history at all and you want to see how it relates to now, she's the person to go to. Incredibly good. Now, almost all of these things I've showed you so far are in print. There's like a certain amount of maybe video connections to some of those. There's also KPFA radio, 94.1 FM in Berkeley, California. So been around since 1947. I have a lot of experience with this organization. Have worked with them for many years. What can I say? The lifeblood of American journalism and democracy. They're connected to a larger organization called Pacifica Radio, which also has a pretty good site. There's a lot of great information there, but KPFA is actually a radio station, so they're broadcasting on their website if don't happen to be in the Bay Area, so you can get that there. Oh, and the Hightower Lowdown is Jim Hightower. He was the Assistant Secretary of Agriculture in Texas. So if you want a Texan perspective on U.S. politics, he's good. This isn't actually a news organization itself, but it's called commondreams.org if you haven't seen it. People, some of them, they actually do have some of their own reporters and journalists now. So but originally it was just a clearinghouse. It was just independent reporters, right? So now it's a little bit of a mix. It's a lot of independent reporters here. This is just the opinion page for some reason has come up. Climate, economy, politics. You can go to the politics one. Okay, Stephen Miller, DNC staffer. I'm not actually reading these articles, but there's a lot of great information here. I have found this to be a very trustworthy website. And since it's not all coming from one organization, it's coming from a whole bunch of different places. But the people that they are vetting the information as it comes through. And there's a lot of different people publishing on here. Some of them are staff. Most of them are not, at least the last time I checked. Maybe I could look that up. So I'm not sure what percentage of the people at Common Dreams. So I just did an AI search on Google, which is essentially an AI search. For the staff writers on Common Dreams, I said, how many of the Common Dreams writers are on staff? And it brought this up. So, and this is an example of me doing just simple research by typing something into Google. But, this might have to be vetted before I go telling everybody. But this, we're just reading what Google says here. Common Dreams is a nonprofit progressive news outlet with a small dedicated newsroom based on its official Our Team page and public listings. So these are the people on staff. So they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've got 9 staff writers. They didn't used to have any. All of the other articles that aren't written by these 9 people are, culled from different places around the world. And we'll assume that this is at least roughly correct. For our purposes, we don't need to know the exact number. We just know there's those small number of writers that are on staff. So sometimes when we're looking things up, we don't need the exact information to continue because it's just not important. But in this case, I think that was the information we wanted. So now I'm going to go through a quick list of places that can often provide you with very good information. However, that I have seen at least make mistakes in the past, and some of them. So the places where I've seen incorrect information on there and nothing was, and I didn't see. Now, this is just my experience, so this is not a completely accurate study on anything, so it didn't really prove anything, but just all I can tell you is my experience. So my experience with these organizations and publications is they are generally good. They mostly have correct information. They are sometimes lacking analysis and context. They sometimes, I have seen factually incorrect things there that I didn't see corrected. Doesn't mean that they weren't ever corrected. I just didn't see it. So it's not really, this isn't huge proof or anything, but it's just kind of my perspective. So first I have 2 here where they're almost vetted. I've never actually seen them do anything incorrect, but I've seen, so not factually incorrect, but just where it was lacking the context I wanted to see in the depth maybe I wanted, so it just wasn't perfect. So, and I'm not saying they're not a good source of information. And one is The Atlantic and the other is the Progressive magazine. So they're both very good. Now this list, mistakes have been made, mistakes have been made with these things. And I do not consider these reliable sources, but I do consider them sources that provide great information at times. So in fact, most of them, I have to use them sometimes. And the way I do that is I read it, I compare it with something else. I have to kind of vet it while I'm using it. I don't automatically trust everything. And I'm pretty good at it. I've been doing this for a lot of decades, so I can read between the lines. I can see when things are missing. I can see I have a professional eye for it. But they are useful. They are useful to me. And I think in some ways, they're needed. These are needed things. They're not bad. They're good. They don't pass my bar of being vetted. They might pass yours. I don't know. But they might be useful for you. So the London Financial Times, a lot of great stuff in there. And similar to Council on Foreign Relations, Foreign Affairs, the business news is news that is between leaders and business leaders. So the tendency is for it to be far more correct than other news. That's true the Financial Times. The New Yorker, great information, sometimes the context. Bloomberg, The Nation magazine, similar thing. The UK Guardian, also similar. Not saying these are bad. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these publications. Just when I use them, I vet it somewhere else too. That's all. So London Financial Times, The New Yorker, Bloomberg, The Nation, and the UK Guardian. Then we have the New York Times, the good old New York Times. So New York Times is the paper of record. So, and that means that's the history is what's in the New York Times, right? Very important paper in the United States, the most important paper. Also, though, I it's not vetted for me. So, a lot of great information. Still read it. I think it's absolutely necessary. The world would be a lot worse without it, but just doesn't pass my muster. Okay, then before we wrap things up here, I'm going to put up the names, share that with you right now. Hopefully you can see it. The picture, if you're looking at it on a phone, you might not be able to see it. But here it is. I'll try and zoom in here to kind of some of my notes. But so here's the reliable sources. I'd say this top list here is pretty, doesn't fit. So that's about as big as I can get it for now. But up there, I've listed Wikipedia, Snopes, Foreign Affairs, Greg Palast. Now, these are places for you to start. This isn't the end all. These are things you can use to vet other things with. I want to be clear about that. And I want you to vet them all to start with for yourself. The era of just believing this because you're hearing it, is over. So you have to look at things for yourself. Make your own decisions. You're going to look at these and kind of use them to vet each other. If you're starting from nowhere and you don't have anything that you absolutely rely on, anything that passes the test, then use them to vet each other. That's what I would do. So there's this list here. I think of this is a good place to start. Just this small list of these people is a good place to start. You might not have a taste for some of these. They might not be exactly your cup of tea, and that's fine. That is absolutely fine. Now I'm going to move the screen. Hopefully, if you were trying to see this, you've seen it. And here we have some more of the vetted ones at the top: KPFA, Pacifica Radio, Hightower Lowdown, and commondreams.org. And then down at the bottom here, we've got sources that may not be 100% for me. They may be for you. To each his own. The New York Times, the London Financial Times, the New Yorker, the Atlantic, Bloomberg, the Nation, and the Progressive. Now, if you want to do, this is for getting news and information. If you want to go to the next level, it's learning how to do actual research yourself. And to do that, you need to, go through academic journals and other studies and other sources of information. And that can be the simple and easy way to do this for everybody that you already have and don't have to purchase is Google Scholar. So, and if you go on Google Scholar, you can see I've written it here, but you can just type Google Scholar into Google. Google knows where it is. So if you want to take a deeper dive on this, you can go into Google Scholar and you can do searches there and look for, this is not for breaking news, but for, things with studies. If you want to find out if a car is dangerous or, some medical things, what cures are, tests for medicines, anything like that. You want to do research on something like that, like hard research, not just looking on, Harvard University's website, which is a great website, by the way, but nothing against Harvard University, Harvard Medical School. But if you want to do the research yourself, you can go to Google Scholar here. Let me see if I can. So I'm going to put that picture up too, which if you're on a computer, you can probably see, but you might have trouble on a phone. So yeah, so here is Google Scholar. You go in here. There it is. So you can look up articles on what? I don't know. COVID-19. Boom. There's going to come up with a lot of stuff. So, but we've got, now you can see here, or maybe you can't, possibly you can see here. So here's the results for when I typed in COVID-19. So there's all these researchers and what they've found in different areas. This is a general one on the pandemic. And there's limitless information here. You want to learn about this stuff? And this is just for that. I just typed in one thing. You could type in anything practically. Great. I mean, talk about source of information. I mean, it's limitless. That's another source. Google Scholar. So it's an in-depth source. So I've just tried to give you a basic run through here of kind of the way things work, of what it takes for something to be vetted, something to be reliable. And I'll just go over that again. They have to be intending to give you accurate information, which can be hard to determine. They have to be able to be vetted by two other sources, and they have to provide analysis and context in their stories. So this is something you can see in the story while you're reading it. Is there analysis there? Is there context here? Are they giving you the whole picture, or at least a large picture? You know, they need to cut out a pretty big piece of pie for it to be, useful. If it's very narrow and doesn't really talk about anything, or if it has a political slant that's clearly coming from some agenda, that's not a reliable source of information. There's probably exceptions to what I just said. The point is it needs to provide a lot of information and context and analysis, and if it doesn't, then it's not really a reliable source. And then also, if they make a mistake, they print a retraction. They, in whatever form that takes. That's the simple way to vet things. There are deeper ways to research things, as we just touched on for a moment there with Google Scholar. And if you want to go deeper, you can do that. But I think you'll probably have fun enough reading Foreign Affairs and Wikipedia. So get started, and feel free to message me if you have questions about this. I am happy to answer them. You can send your comment on the video itself on YouTube or wherever you're seeing it, and I will answer there. Or you can, if you find my email or message me on Facebook, it's easy to find. What Nobody Tells You on Facebook, you can just look that up, and you can message me there. So there's a lot more to this. It goes a lot deeper. It's really a skill. It took me many years to learn, so don't expect to be perfect at it overnight. But I think I've given you somewhere to start, to begin to have a framework. The most important things are simply just the way you approach the information, to not believe what you're seeing until you've vetted it. So, and if you can please comment, subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Please subscribe. Please follow. If you're capable of leaving a rating, then do that. If you can give me a 5-star rating, I'd appreciate it, because then it just helps me get the podcast to more people and keep doing it. All right, so that is it for today. We will see you next week.